Hey everyone, and welcome to Ink Spotlights from Comix Wellspring. This is the series where we shine the spotlight on immensely talented creators who print with us. Today, we're joined by John O. Burke to talk about some of his journey and the routine, the remainders, and so much more. Welcome to the show, John. So good talking to you. So hyped that you're on the show. Tell us
Thanks.
all about the remainders and the remainders first off, and the routine.
Yeah, so the Remainders is the new series we've got launching with Apollo City Comics. It's a story about an outlaw. It's a space western about an outlaw family that lives on a world completely overrun with garbage. Um, yeah, it follows this character Leland as he's like the long lost son of the family, and he's trying to find his way home through the wastelands of Earth, pretty much. And it's kind of I guess there's a story about like learning to love the place that you're from, despite its shortcomings and flaws. And yeah, that's going up on Kickstarter next week. And then my other series, The Routine, will also be available. It's a story about work from the perspective of henchmen. So it's kind of like an action comedy. It's sort of in the vein of like The Tick and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, the remainders, luckily enough, I get to help publish that book and put it on Apollo and everything. And I loved reading the first draft of your script and working with you on that and like giving that advice. And I always kind of promote it as like the most beautiful book in our catalog. But the remainders, it's literally one of the most beautiful books about garbage ever. And I think that's the cool thing about it is that Kieran is just such a phenomenal artist. And the story and the message that the book, portrays, it's all about that. It's about finding beauty in some of the most like what others may see as like disregard and stuff like that. Like it's just an amazingly crafted book from story to art, like script to art. It's just astonishing. But what got you to create in general? Because the routine's a phenomenal book, well written. The remainders is very well written. Where did all this come about for you?
Oh man, that's like a lot to unpack. It's like, all right, how much time we got? It's kind of it's always been there for me, like the creation stuff. Like since I was a kid, I was like, borderline unhealthy obsession with stories, like whether it was movies or comics or books, cartoons. I had those like experiences where I would be transported into a different world, and it was like I would spend as much time there as humanly possible. It's like having all these experiences with people that don't really exist. They're characters in these stories, and I'd have these real connections, and I spent as much time there as I could. And yeah, I wanted to be a part of it from the beginning. Like I wanted to take part in that process. So I would draw and write since I was a kid. And then it really never went away. It just sort of stayed there. And when I like got into my early 20s, I was like, man, like what am I gonna do with like my life? Like, what am I doing here? And I had like sworn I'm not gonna go to school. I'm not gonna go to school, college. So I spent a lot of time in public libraries, like researching, more into the process of writing and art and all this, and trying to figure out like there was always that spark there. And then in time, I was just like, I did cave, and I was like, a lot of people go to school. I bet like, there's things I could learn here. And I went and I enrolled in a community college, and I started taking courses in creative writing and art. And I was trying to figure out, the path. When you're in school, it's like you have to pick a path, kind of. So yeah, I loved art, but the spark was there for me with writing, and like that's where the energy was. So like that's what I followed, and yeah, I kind of like at some point I just made the decision. I was like, this is something that I would be willing to devote my life to this. And if I looked back in hindsight, I would be glad that I made that decision. So
Are you still glad that
yeah,
you
and then
made
at
that
the end,
decision at this point as well? Yeah.
oh yeah. Well, it depends on the day.
Feel that.
You know what I mean? But I knew it was like I was like, this is not going to be a financially rewarding path or anything like that. But I just like I was just following the energy, like I said, and it took me and I never like I was always writing like psychotically the whole time. But by the time I finally got done with school, it took me longer than it was supposed to.
Like many of us, I'm
But
sure. Yeah.
yeah, right. The last my capstone, my final project in school was we had to make a proposal for what we were going to do, and I like went to my professor and I was like, yo, please, can I do a script for a comic book for my like thesis paper? And my professor was like, I don't know how to grade that, but I guess that's okay. So they were willing to adapt for that, and that was actually the first issue of the
Oh,
routine.
wow.
And so yeah, then it kind of went on from there. Actually, I had a friend text me out of the blue, and he was like, I don't talk to him a lot, but he's like a very close friend, and he asked me like, if I gave you $100,000 to do whatever you want with, you can't use anything boring like bills or buying a house or something stupid. He's like, what would you do? And like without hesitation, I was like, I would hire an artist and make a comic book with them. And I was like, I took note of like how easily I answered that question. And then I started to think, I was like, would that really take $100,000? I don't think it would. So I started looking into the mechanics of the process and what it actually takes. And that's when it became real because it started to take steps.
Nice. I love that.
But
Dude, it's a journey and it's about discovery and it's about, figuring yourself out throughout that process too. And a lot of storytelling, we're discovering ourselves, we're learning more about ourselves. And I feel like you've done that so much through these books. Because the routine issue one, it's how I first like met you and got connected. I backed the Kickstarter and I remember reading it and it was like, I was in a stage in my life too where I was really still discovering indie comics, and I read this and I was like, this is phenomenal. Like I want to make a book like on this level of quality. And I think that's how you and me became like acquainted with each other, because I think I just told you, I was like, hey, I love this book. It's beautiful. It's awesome. Like congrats on it. And I love seeing the growth that has come from that. And not only do you have a phenomenal artist on the remainders, Karen Quinn, but dude, the routine is one of the coolest looking books ever. You know what I mean? Like it's so gorgeous. It gives me I'm trying to think of that. Who was that guy that created Batman Who Laughs? I forget his name. But that he's doing the book with Transformers dude right now as well. But it reminds me of his art.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm sure Alex will know.
Yeah, I always said even Daniel Warren Johnson, a lot of Tyler stuff, kind of like in the character work. I think there's a lot of similarities there. But yeah, I'm super lucky. Like and that's part of what's awesome about making comics is that you don't have to do it in isolation either. And like being able to work with a team of people and like having other people rely on you, it makes it way more
Mhm.
real. And like you have to produce because there's people counting on you. And I kind of need that accountability because it's easy to write and avoid and like have it go nowhere. You know what I
100%.
mean?
Well, where can we find your work? Where can we find the routine? Where can we find the remainders? I know as this video premieres, the remainders should be live right now on Kickstarter for people to
Okay,
go
yeah,
back. But where can they find it after the Kickstarter? And where can we get the routine as well?
yeah. So on the Kickstarter, you'll be able to get the routine and the remainders. They'll both be available. And then after the Kickstarter ends, I'll be relaunching the Etsy store. It's kind of like on pause right now because there's so many things flying around. I can't keep track of everything. So yeah, if you follow me on Instagram, though, I'll keep I try to keep that updated with what's current, so you'll be able to access what's good on there.
Awesome. I love to hear it. Thank you so much, John. Thanks for joining us on the spotlight. I can't believe that, you've come this far, you've done this much. And whenever you have your next project, which I could only assume can be very soon, the way you spit out books, come back and let's do another spotlight. Let's bring you back on the show and talk about it.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. Thank you so much for
Thanks,
having
man.
me.
Good talking.